And so he'll cause you to wait on him, to develop your sense of faith, to develop your sense of anticipation. He'll cause you to wait, to line you up, because you're not ready. You're not ready. So you're not lined up. So God is bringing you in sync. You'll discover that as you begin to walk by faith as a lifestyle, the lag time lessens and lessens and lessens as you come more and more in sync with your daddy, who is also your mommy, the large-breasted one. And so the wait time, the lag time begins to lessen. But until then, you cry with anticipation. You pray with anticipation. You ask him for his help with anticipation. And watch God move. Watch him take care of you. Now, my anticipation has a special impact with God, doesn't it? Do you remember the story of the woman with the issue of blood? And she said in her heart that if I can just touch the hem of his garment, that I'll be healed. She went to others to try to do things herself, and none could help her. Instead, the Bible says that her condition worsened the more she tried to dig herself out by going to physicians and taking care of things herself and trying to. And so what happens is she said, if I can just get in, because Jesus was surrounded about by a mob, all of them touching him, heal me, all of them mobbing him. And so she said, if I can just touch the hem, I know that I'll be made whole. And so she worked her way through the crowd, and somehow she managed to touch the hem of his garment. And then Jesus asked these words, who touched me? And the disciples replied, what do you mean, who touched you? Everyone's touching you. Everyone's, heal me, heal me. He was being mobbed, the Bible says. Jesus said, no, someone touched me. And he looked and saw the woman who was healed by the touch. And do you realize what happened? She was able to touch God. Even though others were mobbing Jesus, none of them touched him. But the woman who had faith, he looked around, he turned to her and said, your faith has made you whole. Your faith has touched me. And when I live in the state of anticipation, I live in the state of faith. I am touching God. Do you know that you can touch God? The Bible says that without faith, it is impossible to please God. My faith brings God pleasure. My faith. You know the feeling when a little child hugs your neck, when your little baby hugs your neck and holds you tight, the pleasure that feels, or the kiss of your little baby, the pleasure that brings. Do you know that you can touch God with your faith and bring him the same pleasure? Isn't it true that the mama, when she has the baby, that baby is completely dependent upon her? That actually, that baby is at the center of her world, of that child's world, and that child is at the center of the baby's world. Not the older kids, because they're more independent of him. They can make their own living. They have gifts and talents and education, and they have things that can sustain themselves. But the one that's dependent upon God for healing, for deliverance, for salvation, that person is God's world. And God is that baby's world. There's no bond tighter. There's no bond more intimate. There's no bond closer. The anticipation touches God. Do you know you can touch God with your anticipation of his nourishment, with your anticipation of his healing, with your anticipation of his deliverance and salvation? Do you know that you can touch God, that you can bring pleasure to him that you can please him, that he becomes the center of your world and you become the center of his. Because of your anticipation, you can touch the Most High. You can touch God, who is your daddy, but who is also your mommy, the large-breasted one. You can please him, not by how obedient you are in your action, no, but how faithful you are in your faith. Your actions will follow behind your faith because you're depending upon him for his obedience too. See, he wants to be the very source by which you feed. But you can bring him pleasure with your dependency upon him. You can please him with your anticipation for the move of his spirit. You can touch the Most High. So many people lift up holy hands and they sing unto him. But watch, this woman with the issue of blood did not actually touch Jesus' person, did she? She touched the very edge of his garment, the very hem of his garment. And Jesus felt her. Do you know God can feel you? Do you know he's pleased with your touch? And some of you didn't know you had the power to touch. But he yearns for your touch because you're his world. You're his world. He wants to be your world. And the more dependent you become on him, the more of him becomes your world. There's a special place that he has for you. He wants to spoil you. Do you know that when a baby cries, sometimes no one else will do but mama? Nobody can do anything for you but mama. Nobody can hold you because of that connection. And sometimes that baby's crying, not because it necessarily needs something physically, but sometimes it needs something emotionally. Sometimes that baby just needs to be held, just needs to be loved on, just needs to feel the warmth of your love. And mama is there, glad to oblige. And so is God. You can look to fulfill your own emotional needs by looking for love in all the wrong places, by leaning into addiction to bring pleasure to yourself, or the thing you're really looking for is to be held close by the large-breasted one, to be held close by the Father who is your daddy, but who is also your mommy. Don't you know? Cry out to him with anticipation and bring pleasure to him. Please him, touch him, love him. Let him feel the arms of your faith around his neck, holding him tightly. Let him feel your sweet kisses of faith touching his face. There's no greater pleasure